So, Channel 5 dispensed with Hennessy Sports and replaced them with Wasserman and the Sounders. Now, you can hardly expect Mick Hennessy Jr. to be the voice of objectivity. He says they did them wrong. It was unjustified. I say Mick Hennessy Jr.'s old man was misguided in putting his son on cards because he's not very talented. And I don't want to ball out too much of the Hennessy fighters, but some of the opponents that they were facing, the records of some of the opponents, like Journeyman have to eat, but they were scraping the barrel. Now, I know some of you may want to argue, well, Campbell Hatton is on Matchroom cards. Campbell Hatton actually sells tickets. I'm not saying that justifies his existence on Dazn cards totally, but I would question how much tickets Mick Hennessy Jr. was selling. Maybe he had a little fan base, to be honest. Maybe he did. Mick Hennessy, the bridesmaid of British boxing. He took Carl Froch to a world title only to lose him to Sky, where he became a pay-per-view fighter and a very lucrative commodity. He lost Tyson Fury. After Tyson Fury lost the world title to Frank Warren. He lost the likes of Junior Witter. Now, he might have lost the Channel 5 contract recently, but because of Adam Smith, because he's the driving force behind this, not Ben Shalom. Adam Smith's absolute determination not to be outdone by Dazn, Matchroom or Eddie has given Mick Hennessy stable a new lease of life on Sky. Saturday gone, Sam Eggington, he headlined against a Polish fighter who was 18-0 and got a UD. I haven't seen the fight. Eggington was moonlighting in between Mick Hennessy Channel 5 and Sky while Eddie was still there. But he found himself back on Sky with Mick and Ben Shalom. River Wilson Bent, who rematched Tyler Denny for that English title, and it was a very good fight actually. That's the only fight I saw on the card. Well, River Wilson Bent, he lost his belt. He's a Mick Hennessy fighter. Tyler Denny, I don't know who he's affiliated to. I'm not sure. But he seems to have just breezed in from left field, and we'll be seeing him on Sky cards for the foreseeable future. Aaron McKenna, him and his brother Stevie, and then maybe another brother as well. The Irish lads, Mick Hennessy fighters. He was on there, scored a TKO. I think the co-main event was Adam Asim, an Asian fighter, and Anthony Loffett. And Asim stole all the headlines with a first round TKO. The Asian community are getting very excited, and he could possibly face Dylan Chima, who also won on the card as well. And that would be India versus Pakistan. Now, Asim is not a Hennessy fighter, but it's interesting to see the shifting infrastructure in British boxing. It's very interesting. Quite a lot to talk about, actually. There's a lot of congestion right now, and it seems to be every Saturday there's congestion. An influx of British cards. Now, no disrespect to Sky, but they came a distant second to the Dazn card in Texas, where we saw the new sensation, Bam Rodriguez, take apart Sor Rungvisai in 8 rounds. That was for the WBC World Super Flyweight title. And we was also treated to the man they call MJ Akhmadaliev, the unified super bantamweight champion, putting on one of his career best performances against Ronnie Rios. The women represented Jessica McCaskill, looked menacing and did a thing against an opponent I was told was very capable, but Jessica made short work of the job. 3 world title fights just for the subscription fee. Blew Sky out of the water. No doubt about that. I forgot to mention there was a beautiful display of boxing by Raymond Ford at featherweight. And may this be a lesson to inactive fighters, right? Ronnie Rios fought 4 times in 2019. 4 times. And perhaps, well, obviously the COVID slowed his momentum. Maybe he could have been injured. Other stuff could have stopped him from getting in the ring sooner. But he had 1 fight in the last 3 years before he took on Akhmadaliev. And it showed. I'm just realizing that now I'm on BoxRec. He's had 1 fight from 2019. Let this be a warning to those who are going to try and cheat. And when I say cheat, it's cheat yourself and think, yeah, I don't have to stay active and sharpen up my skills, I can maybe cheat that part of the process. Yeah, you may be successful, but more often than not, fighters will get caught out. Akhmadaliev looks so good in there. People are actually revising on how he would do in a Stephen Fulton fight for all the marbles. And this is what I have told boxers, and some of them have been mad with me. They believe that they are so great and wonderful that they can buck the system. I don't need to go with influential promoters and matchmakers. My talent is going to overcome all of that. And it's a nice thought, but it's nothing more than wishful thinking. It's very immature ramblings from someone who doesn't understand that they're in the matrix right now. You see, it's the boxer's job to get fit. It's the trainer's job to get him fit and get his strategy together. It's the promoter's and the matchmaker's job to make sure he takes the right fights at the right time and that he looks good so they're able to build his profile. And if you think the matchmaker and Eddie Hearn, or whoever Eddie had on board to do the matchmaking, didn't do their job very well on Saturday for Akhmadaliev, nah, they played a blinder. This is what matchmakers are looking for. They're looking for good fighters like Ronnie Rios. There's moles who some of these matchmakers and promoters have. Yeah, he didn't look too sharp in the gym. Yeah, he hasn't turned up for a long time. Yeah, he had some family issues. Oh, yeah, this and that. And then Ronnie gets a phone call. They offer Ronnie a shot at the unified champion on Dazn. Well, he hasn't fought. He's fought once since 2019, an obscure fight wherever. Surely he needs the money. What's he going to say? He's going to say yes. And as I said on Twitter, as I watched the replay on Dazn, I said Ronnie Rios took the type of beating that will shorten careers. He took a horrible beating. Horrible. The commentators, from what I remember, didn't mention him being inactive for so long once. Boxing is an individual sport, but you better know it's a team sport too. Now, say what you like. People have pointed out that you can't go in a pub and see a Dazn card. Because a lot of pubs and bars and similar establishments, they might have Sky Sports in there. They may even have BT because it comes as part of the satellite package, and to keep punters in there, they'll have the football, boxing, and other sports as well. Well, Dazn doesn't have a satellite channel. It's an app. And Dazn don't have Premier League or anything like that. So they're unlikely to wire up Dazn in bars and pubs because there's probably not that much demand for it if they haven't got Premier League football. I don't know if that's something Dazn has looked into. But for the most part right now, without Matchroom, most of the stragglers who are in the pub who've just watched a Premiership game, they're not staying there and watching Sam Eggington versus Zizik or whatever his name is. They're not watching that. You know, Sam Eggington, without being disrespectful, is Matchroom's leftovers. And now he's headlining cards on Sky. And then they had Adam Azim, joint main event with Sam Eggington. Adam Azim, when Matchroom was there, could never headline a card on a Saturday. This card here on Saturday is what Matchroom would have as a next-gen card, a weekday card. But this was on the prime slot on Saturday. And then, you know, you go to Frank Warren. Who did he have the other week? Mark Leach versus Liam Davis. Headlining on a Saturday night. Channel 5 the other day, they had Nathan Gorman versus some European heavyweight. These fights are not headliners. They're not headliners. And that tells us that they're capable of putting on decent cards, but they can't sustain it over the long haul. That's why you see Sky going back to putting on prize fighter tournaments. So the more it gets congested, the more they're going to get exposed because these networks need each other. Now, I'm not going to separate Dazn from the picture. I'm not going to do that. But Dazn are more capable of doing in-house fights that are satisfactory for their subscriber base than the other three. They just are, right? Huey Fury pulls out the Michael Hunter card on Sky. The whole card falls apart because they don't have the depth there. You know, Sky made the gesture 1.2 for JOYCE to cross over the other side of the street. It was very unlikely to happen. And now they're talking about Lucas Brown versus Joseph Parker. They should be getting Parker a better standard of opponent than Lucas. Lucas is a good fight for fighters with less experience than Joe, but that's not a good fight. They'll try and talk it up, they'll try and sell it, but anyway it had to go. Either Sky had to let Joseph Parker go over to BT, let Frank Warren deal with it, or Frank had to let Joseph Parker go over to Sky, because neither of them are anywhere near capable of selling pay-per-view. Forget Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. Like Dillian White or Derek Chisora. So they're going to have to find a way to work with each other, because they can't do it in-house. They can't build these fighters up with in-house fights. I'm not going to ask the British Boxing Board of Control to take the initiative, because that's not their strong point. It just isn't. But right now, British boxing is in danger of being a microcosm of what's happening across the pond. And what's happening across the pond, it's not going to work over here. It's going to destroy our domestic front over here. It's going to destroy it. The fans won't be tolerant over here. They won't continue to be tolerant if certain British title fights or certain prospects are not matched up, regardless of who's promoting you and broadcasting your fights. It's just not going to fly. You see, the PBC, they can keep Spence away from Crawford and still put him in a free belt fight with Ugas. Now, the gene pool at 147 over the PBC is running dry, but it's been sustainable for a few years. Top Rank can keep Beterbiev away from Bivol, but they can still put Beterbiev in a free belt fight. PBC can still put Jamel Charlo in an undisputed fight. Aside from Dazn and Matchroom, Britain don't have the gene pool of talent to do that. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. We don't have the depth to do that. We got some good fighters, world-class fighters, and we got world champions as well. We do, but we don't have the depth. It's only a tiny country, punching way above our weight. So we rely on the best of the UK fighting each other, and that's what's kept Britain alive and thriving over the years. As we increasingly see more cards on a Saturday, not just in the UK, but in America as well. Sometimes we could have 6, 7 cards on one Saturday, on one given Saturday. Sometimes 3 or 4 British cards. That happened quite a few times when Pro Bellum were on Eurosport, actually. And if the promoters and broadcasters are able to put so much cards on out there, there's no reason for certain fights not to happen and certain fighters to be inactive and not be able to work. There's no reason why a Dazn fighter, if he gets a good opportunity at Queensbury, shouldn't be allowed to pursue that. And vice versa. Same with Channel 5 and Sky. Cold War politics is not going to work in the UK. You see, the PBC, I wouldn't even say they're good at spinning it or Bob Arum is good at spinning it, but they're becoming accustomed to that, and they've got a lot of phlegm spitters who can convince people to take the side of networks over what actual fights should happen. I don't see that translating well over here. Some people are talking about a rota system where, for example, Eddie gets Conor Benn versus Esselman, who's the Frank Warren fighter. And Frank, in return, could get David Adilier, Fabio Wardley. Just giving you an example. It's a nice thought, but will the egos let that happen just to keep the fans happy? The British Boxing Board of Control, I don't know what they're playing at. The British heavyweight title has been inactive since 2020. November 2020, when your boy Daniel Dubois took a knee and lost the British title to Joe Joyce. Now Joyce, first we have to ask why Joe Joyce is holding on to the belt. I mean, he's the mandatory contender for one of USAC's belts, the WBO belt. But Joe's just holding on to the belt. He's gone past British level. It's all about marketing, you know. Frank Warren is not going to vacate because when promoting Joyce, he still wants Joyce to be known as the British champion. He wants that attached to his name, even though he's got no intention of defending the belt. He's probably waiting for the British Boxing Board to ask, what are you doing? Are you going to defend or are you going to give it up now? You're a mandatory for the WBO. What contenders are there for Joe Joyce to fight? You already knocked off Dubois. What contenders are? Who are you going to fight? Nathan Gorman? Well, he's on Channel 5. Who are you going to fight? Fabio Wardley? Well, he's on Matchroom. Who are you going to fight for the British title? Holding on to it is senseless. Who's he fighting this Saturday? Christian Hammer, yeah? They're talking about him fighting Tyson Fury later on in the year. And they're going to be looking for a world title fight or high-profile fights like the Joseph Parker fight. They're not looking for British title fights, but they're still holding on to the belt. There's no reason for the British heavyweight title to have been inactive so long. So now the British Boxing Board of Control, they want Fabio Wardley and Nathan Gorman to fight for the English title that Fabio either has or had. From what I remember Fabio saying, whatever use the belt had has run its course. He doesn't really need that belt no more. So he wanted himself and Nathan Gorman to be nominated to fight for the British title. But the board ain't doing shit. They're letting Joyce hold on to a belt that he's got no plans of defending. You know, there's no way that Nice Sowland or his brother are going to make a big effort to put on an English title between Gorman and Wardley. It has to be the British title or nothing. You can't be in the UK doing primetime slots on Saturday advertising English heavyweight title fights as the main event. You want British title, Commonwealth, European, World. Now, I'm not saying the English title is irrelevant, but, you know, that's more for David Adilier right now. Johnny Fisher, less experienced heavyweights to go and contest. Strip Joyce of the belt. He's not going to miss it. Get the purse bids in. Matchroom versus Wasserman, Channel 5 versus Dazn, and let's get the British title active. I'm pretty confident Frank Warren and the BT staff have told Joe Joyce to keep talking shit about Anthony Joshua to get some attention to his fight against Christian Hammer. You know, Joe is the WBO mandatory contender on the undercard to Jason Cunningham and Tete fighting Christian Hammer. And Joe's still going in talking about AJ. Not a word about Christian Hammer because it's a fight that should be a mark time tune-up of sorts and nothing more. The Joseph Parker fight fell through. Joe replied he's always wanted to fight Parker, but Parker pretended he wanted to fight. But in reality, he says Parker has done everything to avoid him. It was all agreed. He says Parker pulled out the scheduled date of July the 2nd with a BS excuse about his trainer. And then he begged to have the fight pushed back to September to have more time to train. Joyce said he agreed. Then there was more stuff that Parker asked for and got, and all was agreed. And then Parker signed to Sky. Real talk, you're full of ish. And he says Parker don't want to fight. Apparently Joyce will be fighting again on September the 24th, and he said if Parker isn't scared, sign the contract, stop ducking. So Joyce is out there doing a lot of social media, a lot more than we're accustomed to seeing him do, which is unusual for Joe. He normally likes to lay back, away from all that. But they know he's basically got no profile. He's got no profile out here. So all that Aram talking about Joyce and Tyson Fury as a stadium fight in the UK, I'm not too sure about that. Well, Parker said he wants to fight, and apparently Ben Shalom put up 1.2 for Joyce to cross over to Sky and take the fight. Now, I see why Frank didn't want to let Joyce go over there, because it was assumed he was going to have control of the promotion of that fight, putting it on BT, and now he's expected just to roll over and let Sky take over the event. But this is boxing, yeah? When you have title fights, eliminators, they have purse bids to work these things out. What network is going to go on, what promoter is going to promote the bout. And if there's not purse bids, then there's got to be dialogue between the teams of the two fighters, how they're going to work out splits, gates, TV rights, pay-per-view, etc., etc. So Frank can't be saying to himself, well, I'm just going to go unchallenged after I try and make a fight. Do you have a counter offer? Can you offer Joseph Parker something that he's not getting at Sky and keep Joe Joyce happy too with whatever the offer is? If you can, then BT get to put the event on and it's all good. If not, you can't really just let Joe sit on the sidelines. I mean, what's Joe got going for him? Christian Hammer. Well, Tyson Fury later on in the year, according to Bob Arum. I want to hold my breath. You know, Joe's not getting no younger. He's older than AJ, he's older than Fury. And BT have got to keep him motivated as well. Look, highest bidder wins. If boxing media and boxing fans stuck to that simple principle and logic, one man makes an offer, either you make a counter offer or the first offer stands, then the promoters and the networks have nowhere to hide. They can't just keep spinning yarns while they're not making fights. But boxing fans, let's face it, a lot of them are not that intelligent really. They'll argue for the sake of it rather than trying to make sense of it. Big up to Question Marks. I follow him on Twitter, he follows me. He said it's quite silly Frank saying Parker is from New Zealand, so that automatically makes him the opponent, the B-side. And that's what Frank was saying in the press conference. But like Question Mark said, Parker is being backed by Sky. They were willing to pay the juggernaut to head over to Sky. So all that New Zealand opponent talk makes zero sense. 100% right. 100% right. I mean, what is all that about? Like, people like Frank and Leonard, I'd throw Bob in there, but he's a bit more successful than them, so he can get away with talking a bit more shit. But if JOYCE, Frank's fighter, is not the opponent, he needs the A-side, why didn't you make the offer? Why is Sky making the offer for the opponent, in your own words? Joe Parker, B-side, the opponent, the visitor, against A-side Joe Joyce. How is Joe Joyce an A-side fighter? Tell me a pay-per-view Joe Joyce has done in his whole pro career. His career has been managed woefully bad. He's an Olympic silver medalist. Dillian came off-road. Off-road. And I haven't got the receipts here and I ain't done no research, but Dillian has been in bigger fights, more lucrative fights, pay-per-view fights, and Joe is older than Dillian. You can argue that Joe's only been a pro since 2016, but he was fast-tracked. Joe's got good wins on his record. Bryant Jennings, unbeaten Daniel Dubois, Takam. He's just been badly managed.
Question.
Is Joe Joyce making 1.2 fighting Christian Hammer on Saturday? And he's headlining. It's not on pay-per-view. You know what the fucked up thing is? Thinking about it now. Joseph Parker has been on more pay-per-view events in the UK than Joe Joyce. AJ, Dillian, Derek. I paid for all of them. So who's really the A-side? Who's really the visitor, the foreigner? You could argue that Joseph Parker is more popular in the UK than Joyce.